I am Venki, a working professional in IT as well as an amateur masters athlete and a coach for endurance sports. You are listening to the Working Athlete podcast. Here, I talk to working athletes from all walks of life and experts from various sports to provide you with inspiration, training tips, and lifestyle advice. If this is something that interests you, I have a small request from you. Please subscribe to the channel on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from. You can also let me know what you like and what you would like to listen to more of by commenting in the comment section on YouTube. I promise to do my best to improve with each episode and bring you the best content that helps you and me get better each day. This episode is brought to you by The Bike Affair. If you are in search of a one stop destination that caters to all your cycling needs, our today's sponsor, The Bike Affair, is the perfect place to check out. I have known the founders of The Bike Affair, Krish and Gokul, personally for nearly 15 years now. In fact, my first century ride was with Krish back in 2008. They are both exceptional human beings and entrepreneurs that believe in providing exceptional service to their customers. And it shows. With over 14 years of experience, the Bike Affair has established itself as a trusted source offering honest advice and exceptional service. They are offering a special treat for the listeners of this podcast. You can enjoy a 10% discount on your first order by using the code BikeyVenki on their website. So if you are in Hyderabad, visit their store in Kondapur, or if you are anywhere else in India, shop online by using the link thebikeaffair.com. I will leave the link in the show notes. Now, enjoy the podcast. In this episode, we are going to cover various aspects of nutrition for endurance cycling. Last week, I asked on my socials what is the most important topic that you want to be covered on this podcast, and there are 5-6 requests asking for covering nutrition for endurance cycling. In this episode, I am going to make an attempt to cover the nutrition aspects. I am going to use a research paper that recently came out called Athletes Nutritional Demands, a narrative review of nutritional requirements. This is the paper that I'm going to kind of cite. This narrative review basically means it is a study of various other papers on this particular topic, which is nutrition. They would have referred various research papers that are there on this topic, nutrition for athletes, and they have come up with their conclusions or their observations from all these research papers. Okay, I'm going to use this to make sense of the nutritional aspects, what needs to be done, what can be avoided, and what are the practical takeaways that we can take from this research study. What are the macronutrients that are important for everyone, including cyclists? Let us start from there. We talk about nutrition, most of us understand what are macronutrients, what are carbohydrates, what are proteins, what are fats. These are the macronutrients. But most of us are confused as to what is important for our endurance performance. There is a saying that carbs are king. So we need to understand why carbs are king, and when do we consume protein, and fats, what are fats, and what are the sources of them, and when and how much do we consume these. So this is what I'm going to try and decode for you, make it easy for you to understand. I'm going to read a little bit from the research paper and try to give my interpretation of it. So bear with me when I read through this paper. It can be a little wordy. Now let us understand carbohydrates.
The paper says a high proportion of carbohydrates in diet can significantly enhance performance during endurance and intense training. This is achieved by increasing exogenous carbohydrate availability and storing carbohydrates known as glycogen in the muscles and the liver. So, glycogen storage in the muscles and liver is very important to maintain. During training, there is a gradual depletion of endogenous carbohydrates due to energy expenditure. This depends upon the level and length of the exercise. Rapid carbohydrate intake after exercise replenishes carbohydrate stores quickly and enhances the body's training induced adaptation processes. So basically, what he's saying is there is something called glycogen stores, which is basically nothing but carbohydrates stored in form of glycogen in muscles and liver. And when the body is producing energy, these during exercise, these glycogen stores can get depleted based on the length of that exercise and the intensity of this exercise. So when we provide carbohydrates exogenously, exogenous means from outside, right? Endogenous is inside the body, inside the muscles and liver that exists, the glycogen that exists. When we provide carbohydrates exogenously by consuming carbohydrates during exercise, the glycogen stores that are there inside will kind of, the rate of depletion will reduce because we are providing the carbohydrates from outside, and we will be able to sustain the effort for longer duration for higher intensity. That is why the carbohydrates are king when it comes to endurance exercises, be it long distance or short intense races. It's very important. That's why providing nutrition through carbs is very important. Again, this among macronutrients, carbohydrates play a particularly crucial role in athletic performance since they can be metabolized aerobically and anaerobically. This basically means the carbohydrates can be burnt during long, slow intensity exercises, aerobic exercises, as well as very high intense anaerobic efforts. No other macronutrient, protein, or fats have this capability of being metabolized, basically turned into energy both aerobically and anaerobically. So that's why carbs become very important. Again, endurance activities of moderate to high levels of intensity along with resistance based workouts heavily depend on carbohydrates as primary fuel source. Therefore, maintaining essential glycogen stores around 80 to 100 grams in the liver and 300 to 400 grams in the muscles of the skeletal system is crucial. So these are the typical glycogen stores within the body. Numerous studies confirm that limited nature of glycogen stores, highlighting their pivotal role as predominant fuel source for several hours during moderate engaging in aerobic exercise at a high level of intensity. So there is documented evidence that as glycogen stores decrease, it becomes harder to maintain a high pace of intense exercise. Consuming a snack or meal high in carbohydrates before exercise ensures optimal muscle glycogen reserves. On the other hand, low pre exercise glycogen levels result in early fatigue, reduced training intensity, depleted muscle glycogen, impaired muscle contraction, and protein degradation. So, basically, what we're saying is eating before a long ride or a long race, what it does is you are going through a fasting phase, right, through the night. So eating before, as soon as you wake up or 2-3 hours before a race or an event, what it does is it tops up the glycogen levels within the body. And once you start consuming carbs at the start and throughout the event, throughout the race, it kind of the glycogen levels in the body are there, and you are whatever the energy demands are being met by the carbs that you are providing, the fueling that you are doing through the activity. The performance decreases as the glycogen stores go low. So if you are able to keep the glycogen stores up, you are able to continue your effort at a higher intensity and for higher duration. That's the logic behind it. So going back to the paper, a straightforward suggestion for maximizing internal glycogen reserves in high performance athletes is to consume adequate carbohydrates based on the intensity and duration of their training. Generally, the suggested daily carbohydrates intake fall within the range of 5 to 12 grams per kilogram of body weight. This is particularly relevant for athletes engaged during training sessions of moderate to high intensity lasting over 12 hours per week. It is recommended to target the upper limit of this range, precisely 8 to 10 grams per kg of body weight daily. When substantial muscle damage is not present, this level of carbohydrate intake has demonstrated effectiveness in maximizing glycogen storage. So basically, if based on body weight, they provide a simple formula of how much carbs you need to be consuming on a daily basis. Based on, say, if you are a 70 kg athlete, they are saying consume 8 to 10 grams per kg of carbs if your exercises are like over 12 hours per week. So they have provided there, they said 5 to 12 grams per kg of body weight, but if your activities are going 12 hours per week or more, target the higher range, which is 8 to 10 grams per kg of body weight. That means, to keep it simple, let's take 10. Then if you are a 70 kg athlete, 700 grams of carbs per day is what you have to look at. So basically, they have given a simple formula to consume according to the body weight. They also have given a table if your activity per day is less than 60 minutes, which is less than 1 hour, you have the recommended carb intake is 3 to 5 grams per kg. So if you are a 70 kg athlete, it will be 210 to 350 grams of carbs, right? But if you are a if your minutes of activity is greater than 180, that's like you are working out more than 3 hours a day, then it kind of comes to 8 to 12 grams per kilo. That is 560 to 840 grams through carb. It is mostly based on the duration and intensity of your workouts and your body weight. This is what you need to base your carb consumption on. Okay, it might have become a little complicated, but to summarize, going into an event, especially a multi-day event, with your glycogen stores topped up is very important. We just talked about what is glycogen and why is it important. That is why carb loading is very popular in our endurance community. Eating 3 to 4 hours up to 1 hour before an event or a race is beneficial performance is what this paper says. And we have seen some of us wake up at 3 a.m. or before to make sure that we have a pre-race meal if our race is starting at 7 o'clock or 6:30, right? So that we have something, we have our pre-race meal 3 hours before the race. This is something that we know from experience, but this is the logic behind it. Also start to fuel right from the start of a ride or a race and continue to do so will ensure that the glycogen stores don't get depleted and you will be able to perform at a good level. Post workout, look to consume 4 is to 1 carbs to protein ratio for recovery. We will talk about why protein is important just in a moment, but this is what you can do in terms of carb consumption and the timing of it. So pre event, during and post. During it, again, how much do you need to consume during the activity? There were recommendations before saying 60 to 90 grams of carbs. Again, it kind of depends on the body weight of the body weight and the energy demands of the event, body weight of the athlete. But 60 to 90 grams per hour during the activity is what is recommended. Nowadays, the pro peloton is going crazy. They are going 120 grams per hour, or even I heard even 140 grams per hour. But this is something that they have trained over a long period, and this is what they are doing. But for us, we need to experiment. Start with 60 to 90 grams and see how you are reacting. Use that formula that we just talked about based on your body weight and the duration of exercise. Use 8 to 10 grams per kg of body weight. Now let us talk about proteins. What are proteins? Amino acids are the structural constituents of proteins and providing the building blocks for all the tissues. So basically, proteins are the building blocks of everything, the muscles. For athletes, the main purpose of consuming protein following a vigorous exercise or competitions is rebuilding and restoration, involving both the skeletal muscle and the connective tissues. When we involve in rigorous exercise, we are basically breaking down the muscles, right? And during the recovery process, these muscles are getting rebuilt and getting stronger. That is the ideal time for giving the body the protein to aid that rebuild. The amount, timing, and type of protein intake all affects the extent to which muscles remodel after training. It is crucial to emphasize that protein is not the primary source of fuel for athletes. So, this is what is important to understand. Protein is not the primary fuel source, but the protein is very important to rebuild the muscles. So it is important to note that protein has limited capacity for the body to utilize as an energy source during activity, whereas carbohydrates are primary fuel source. Therefore, rehydration and intake of simple carbohydrates, glucose, are most important for athletes during exercise. So during exercise, focus on carbs. Post exercise, carbs plus protein for recovery. To enhance the myofibrillar protein synthesis after exercise and minimize amino acid degradation, and a nutritional recommendation advises incorporating 0.31 grams per kilo of high quality and quickly digestible protein like whey protein. Those pursuing this objective should strive to integrate this amount per meal. A mixed meal consisting of carbohydrates and protein after exercise with a carbohydrate to protein ratio of approximately 4 is to 1 is recommended to initiate muscle glycogen synthesis. Note that exercise has sustained anabolic impact for at least 24 hours. However, the ideal timing for protein ingestion depends on individual tolerance, and as it may diminish over time after activity. So there are multiple things that we need to break down from this. Like they're suggesting 0.31 grams per kilo of body weight of protein to be consumed. And then another thing is 4 is to 1 ratio, carbs to protein ratio to be consumed post activity. And they are also saying the anabolic effects of exercise last up to 24 hours, right? Depending on the intensity and the duration, it can go longer as well. So the protein needs to be supplied throughout this period, but the initial 30 minutes post exercise is the most crucial period where the body is most receptive to consume this. So during exercise, mostly carbohydrates are needed. Post exercise, for recovery, consume food with 4 is to 1 carb to protein ratio. So that's why mostly fruit smoothies are popular post exercise, because they offer an easy way to get that proportion of 4 is to 1 carbs to protein. But it can be just rice, veggies, and a protein source like meat, paneer, tofu, or dal. It is something like that. It is important to replenish the calories and provide these macronutrients as quickly as possible post the activity. So that's what is protein. Why is it important? It is important in building back the muscles which we are breaking down during exercise, and building them back we are providing protein so that building back of muscles can be quicker and we can get stronger. They have also provided recommendations for endurance exercise. They have recommended 1.2 to 2 grams per kg of body weight. That translates to, if you are a 70 kilo athlete, that translates to 84 to 140 grams of protein per day. I would say, keep it depending on your body weight, calculate 1.2 to 2 grams per kg of body weight. So remember that, do the math, and aim to provide this protein throughout the day. There is also debate on how much protein can the body synthesize or absorb at one go. If you look at this and say, I need 90 grams of protein, you take 3 scoops of protein at one go, the body might not absorb. It is important that the body synthesizes whatever you are giving. There is a debate on only 20 grams of protein can be synthesized at a time or something like that, right? So I will come back with the exact number maybe in a later episode, but keep that. You don't have to consume all 100 grams of protein at a time, so if that is your protein need. So you can space it out through the day. It can be a scoop of protein right after the workout, and later protein source like legumes, dals, meat, paneer, tofu later during the day, chicken and all that. So you can time that protein. So that is about protein and how and when of protein consumption. Now let us come to fats, the third macronutrient. This paper says to achieve optimal performance, athletes need to consume an appropriate amount of energy not only during exercise but also during recovery. Fat oxidation primarily depends on oxygen, while carbohydrates catabolism can occur with or without oxygen. So basically, fats can be broken down only when there is oxygen. Oxidation happens, but carbohydrates can be broken down with or without oxygen. It is worth noting that the complete breakdown of glucose in the mitochondria involving the presence of oxygen yields more ATP. ATP are basically the energy cells, the constituents through which energy is produced. When there is presence of oxygen, when the glucose is broken down, it yields more ATP. So consuming an adequate amount of fat is important, but high fat or fat loading diets are ineffective. They cite a few papers to say why this is the case. It is recommended to consume dietary fat between 20 to 35% of total calorie intake for athletes, with saturated fat intake being less than 10%. What are the sources of fat? There are many sources of fats like avocados, nuts, seeds, olive oil, and these are all kind of considered good sources of fat. But there are also saturated fat sources which we need to keep the calories from them to less than 10%, while the total calories from fats can be between 20 to 35%. So while the suggestion of increasing dietary fat intake has been made for a positive impact on utilization of substrates, and the prevailing consensus discourages high fat diets due to their adverse effects on performance. Instances of reduced carbohydrate in utilization and gastrointestinal discomfort further reinforces the argument against such dietary approaches. Whether the negative outcomes arise from elevated consumption of dietary fat or probable simultaneous decrease within dietary carbohydrate, the adaptation of diets rich in fats is not recommended. So they're pretty clear with the recommendation when it comes to fats. Again, if you are consuming more calories in terms of fats, that would also mean that you are consuming less carbohydrates, right? And we have already seen why carbs are important when it comes to endurance performance. So that is why they are saying don't focus on fat rich diets. Keep the calories from fats to within 20 to 30% and continue to have carbs and proteins. All right, so that is what it is in terms of nutrition and nutrients, various macronutrients, carbs, proteins, and fats. Now, let us talk about hydration as well, right? Hydration, as we know, is crucial. And let me read from the paper. It is crucial to replenish fluid losses during, before, and after exercise. Researchers have found that losing 2% of body fluids can affect performance and cognitive function. Just 2% of fluid loss can affect your performance and cognitive function. So this is very important to understand. Also, thirst is often not effective indicator of hydration, as 1.5 liters can be lost before thirst perception. That's why there is this saying, right? Drink before you're thirsty and eat before you're hungry. That is the golden saying that we always need to keep in mind. This paper also says that we can lose up to 1.5 liters of fluids before we start perceiving thirst, right? Athletes are susceptible to losing zero point 0.3 to 2.4 liters per hour of sweat, which includes not only water but also salt, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and chloride. Consequently, fluid and electrolyte replacement should be incorporated into their recovery. Did you notice the range that they have mentioned? 0.3 to 2.4 liters per hour of sweat. You can lose those many fluids through sweat, right? Some of us are very light sweaters, some of us are extremely high sweaters, and most of us fall somewhere in between. So light sweaters can be like zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.5 liters per hour, and extremely high sweaters can be 2.4 liters of sweat per hour. So if you need to be consuming not only the fluids but all these salts in terms of potassium, magnesium, chlorides that you are losing, we need to replenish. That's why some of the athletes, national level and international level athletes, do a sweat test to determine how much fluids, what's the electrolytes, that amount of electrolytes they need to consume. So sweat test can kind of come in handy to see how much fluid, how many electrolytes you are losing per hour and how much you need to consume per hour. So athletes are advised to initiate a pre-training regimen in a well-hydrated state, ingesting approximately 500 to 600 ml of water or sports beverage 2 to 3 hours before engaging in exercise. So they're saying we usually carry a 600 ml of bottle on our bottle cages, right? So they're recommending consuming one bottle of that energy drink 2 to 3 hours before engaging in a long exercise and stuff, and an additional intake of 200 to 300 ml of water or sports drink is recommended 10 to 20 minutes before the onset of exercise. That is a half a bottle to a little bit less than half a bottle of energy drink or water before 10 to 20 minutes before the exercise, right? And throughout the training session, fluid replenishment should align with the sweat and urine losses, endeavoring to sustain hydration levels while minimizing body weight reduction to less than 2%. Whatever you are consuming is towards making sure that you are not losing more than 2% of body weight due to sweat. Typically, the goal can be met by consuming 200 to 300 ml of fluid at intervals of 10 to 20 minutes. So, that is the recommendation that will typically be 600 to 900 ml per hour, right? Post activity, the focus of hydration should be on rectifying any fluid deficits incurred during the practice or competition. Obviously, post the activity, you will be looking to refill whatever deficits are there even after doing all this. Sports drinks are primarily used to rehydrate and replenish essential electrolytes and other important components for athletes, such as magnesium, sodium, calcium, potassium, glucose, and fluids lost during strenuous exercise to enhance endurance and performance. On the other hand, usage of sports drinks may differ based on the nature of the exercise. The best time to use a sports drink is during high intensity and long duration exercise lasting more than 1 hour, on hot and humid days, during heavy or salty sweating, and for recovery after training. So this is talking about when you need to consume these sports drink, right? So they are saying maybe for 1 hour or less you might not need sports drink, but again, if it is that 1 hour session is super intense and you end up sweating a lot during that session, yes, again you can do that, you can consume that. But they are saying if it is super intense or long during high intensity or long duration exercises of more than 1 hour or hot and humid days, you need to consume this. Okay, so that is what it is when it comes to electrolytes. Drink regularly even before you feel thirsty. Maybe do a sweat test, or if not all of us can go and do a sweat test. These things can be very costly and not available everywhere, right? So you can through trial and error you can try various compositions of sport drinks and various amounts of hydration, and then see what works best for you in terms of performance and recovery as well. That is very important. One way to kind of see whether you are properly hydrated or not is to monitor your urine color. It needs to be light pale yellow or white. If it is darker yellow or close to red and stuff, you are in a dangerous territory in terms of hydration. So keep that in mind. Okay, so we have covered various macronutrients, how much to consume, what to consume, when to consume. We also talked about hydration, how much to consume, what are the various things that we need to keep in mind. So let us end this today's episode here. In a future episode, I would try to address how we can use these principles that we talked about today in this episode to endurance cycling, ultra endurance cycling, and short distance cycling races. I hope this kind of gave you some idea about why various things like carbs, proteins, and fats are important, how much to eat, when to eat, and what to eat. And also, when it comes to hydration, why it is important to replenish, how much to drink based on your sweat rate, what are the things that you need to look to replenish and stuff like that. So let us end this episode here. I will come back talking about how we can put this to use for various types of cycling. Thank you for listening. See you next week.